Imagine showing up to James Madison's home, Montpelier, and finding 0 exhibits on James Madison. And Montpelier is not the only historic site avoiding the telling of actual history. We've done the work to find the top 5 and worst 5 historic sites to visit this summer. Let's start with the top 5. Number 1 is Mount Vernon, which is dedicated to America's indispensable man, George Washington. They have an entire museum and education center which puts kids in George Washington's shoes, compelling them to make the decisions that George Washington himself faced. It pays careful attention to the legacy and accomplishments of our first president, as well as tell the stories of individuals who lived at Mount Vernon. For its careful attention to the legacy and accomplishments of George Washington, its modest tone, and attention to primary source documents, George Washington's Mount Vernon earns an A from the Heritage Guide to Historic Sites. Next, we have Mark Twain's house, which also earns an A from the Heritage Guide to Historic Sites. It is a beautiful Victorian mansion situated in Connecticut. It pays careful attention to the legacy of Mark Twain without shying away from his controversial aspects. It is like a gingerbread house, as our reviewer Bill McClay writes, that will just capture the imagination of America's children, like Mark Twain's novels did for so many of us. If military history is your thing, consider Antietam National Battlefield, the site of the Civil War's most important battle. Charles Murray, our evaluator, has lived near the battlefield since 1989, and his evaluation reads like a tour itself as he takes visitors through the visitor center, the grounds, and the trails that populate that site. And of course, who could forget Gettysburg National Park? The tour guides at Gettysburg are infamous for their deep knowledge of American history. It is a place where the words of the Gettysburg Address still resound. And of course, we have to remember the Alamo. This is a site that reminds us of the courageous spirit that animated Americans and still animates us to this day. Unfortunately, not all sites are created equal. Here's what you need to know about the worst 5 historic sites from our guide. First is the Emily Dickinson Museum, where they use her poetry to promote a host of progressive causes like abortion. That's one of the reasons it received a C grade from our historic guide. Next is the National Portrait Gallery, which houses our most important painting of an American president, George Washington's painting by Gilbert Stuart. Unfortunately, that site cares more about inclusivity than education and elevates LGBTQ+ rights to the level of civil rights, something many Americans would not agree with. Next is Harriet Beecher Stowe's Center for Literary Activism. As the name itself suggests, this site cares more about promoting activism than maintaining the legacy of one of America's most important writers, Harriet Beecher Stowe. After the Bible, Uncle Tom's Cabin was the best-selling book of the 19th century. Next is the National Museum of African American History and Culture. All the museum's exhibits lean the same way: against America. Rather than depicting history, this museum is more concerned with promoting an ideology and cherry-picks facts in order to promote that ideology. Last, we have James Madison's home, Montpelier, which has no exhibits on James Madison himself. The only exhibit for the Constitution tries to portray that document as a pro-slavery document, something that Frederick Douglass would not agree with. He said the Constitution was a glorious liberty document, something that we could discern simply by reading its text. Go to heritage.org/historic sites to find your next adventure, and let us know in the comments which site we should review next.